Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Unacademy, the one stop destination for the civil services English medium aspirants. Welcome to Conquer Prelims. We are here to conduct phase 2 of this session. We are going to be covering important static topics related to social issues that have a high chance of coming in this year's Prelims 2025. I've used a lot of previous year questions to analyze important themes. I've also taken into consideration certain recent exams, such as the geoscientist exams, some CDS exams that have also been conducted by UPSC, to at least gain a little bit of insight in the important themes and areas that UPSC is focusing on. If a question is not directly on this, at least the theme can be repeated or highlighted in terms of the question, or at least we can get some amount of information that can help us in solving a part of the question, if not the whole question. Having said that, let's begin today's session. If at all you want to download the PPT of this session, you can use this QR code. You'll be directed to a Telegram channel, and I'll upload the PPT or the PDF of this session after we are done with the session here. Now, let's begin with the questions first, so that you get some time to think about the question while I'm reading the question as well. You get some time to internalize what you have thought or where you were wrong. So let's begin with the question, create a little bit of a thinking intrigued pattern, and then solve the question using the information provided in the further slides. So let's begin with topic number 1. So first statement or first question, this has come recently in the geoscientist exam conducted by UPSC as well in 2025. That means absolutely recently, and therefore it can be important. This is related to the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act of 2013. In short, it is called the POSH Act, Prevention of Sexual Harassment at Workplace Act of 2013. Let's read the statements and then we'll dive into the description. Statement 1 says, it is based on the guidelines emerging from the Vishakha judgment of the Supreme Court in 1997. This is absolutely correct. Supreme Court took up a case related to prevention of sexual harassment at workplace. They issued a guideline because no law was in place at that point of time, and those guidelines were used in order to create this legislation, that is the POSH legislation. I'm sorry about the slides. One second. That is the POSH legislation. So yes, the Supreme Court released what is called as the Vishakha guidelines in 1997, which were instrumental, which were used by the parliament to create what is called the POSH Act. And that is absolutely correct. Statement number 1. Let's analyze statement number 2. As per the Act, it is mandatory for an employer, even with 2 employees, to form an internal complaints committee in the workplace. That means, which kind of enterprises or workplace is it mandatory for them to create an internal complaints committee? That is also something that we will analyze. This statement is wrong, because an internal complaints committee is to be formed in those establishments where there are 10 or more than 10 employees, not 2 employees. So that is why statement 2 becomes incorrect. Statement 3 says Vishakha is the name of the woman complainant who filed the case. That means the woman who filed the case. This is incorrect. Vishakha is the name of the NGO who filed the case on behalf of a woman who was called Bhavri Devi. She was a government social worker in the state of Rajasthan. And while she was doing her work of preventing child marriages, she was raped by some members of the community, or the members of the community in that village. So the woman, or the incident related to Bhavri Devi and her rape while she was doing her duty, in fact a gang rape while she was doing her duty, created this issue, and Vishakha was the NGO which basically took up the case in the court. And in this case, the court basically gave the guidelines, and the case that you need to remember is Vishakha versus State of Rajasthan case. And these guidelines relating to prevention of sexual harassment at workplace were instrumental in creating this legislation, which was much later in 2013. So this becomes understood that statement 3 is incorrect, because Vishakha is not the woman who complained. Rather, Vishakha is the name of the NGO who filed a complaint on behalf of the woman, and the woman's name is actually Bhavri Devi. UPSC does not really get into, for CSE exams, into a lot of these kind of details, yet it is okay for us to know. So the answer here becomes A, that is 1 only. Now, in this context, let's understand some important features of this act. Prevention of Sexual Harassment at Workplace Act of 2013. How does it define a workplace? Now, please note, it defines a workplace in a very extended manner. That means it takes an extended nature of a workplace. A workplace could be a traditional office to which a woman is going, or any place that she is required to visit while she is performing her duties. So anywhere that she is required to visit, for example, if a journalist is required to visit any place, and in that course she is traveling by the office given transport vehicle, even that place will be considered as workplace under the POSH Act. So it could be a traditional office or any place that a woman is requiring to go because of the nature of her job, as well as the transportation provided by the employer. That will define the workplace. So if a statement in prelim comes that the workplace is decided in an extended manner, the answer is correct. It also includes the transportation or anywhere that she is visiting during her work hours. Who can be an aggrieved woman? That means which all women can resort for relief under the POSH Act or file a complaint under this POSH Act. Either it is a woman who is working, or she is visiting a workplace, or even a student in a higher education institute, etc. Please understand, the nature of the work does not debar you from being or for filing a complaint under the Act. That means whether you are in regular employment, in contractual employment, or you are working without any remuneration in a voluntary capacity, in all these stages, you are an aggrieved, or you can be an aggrieved woman under the POSH Act. So it gives a very wide range to who can file a complaint. So if you're working on a voluntary basis, yet you are included, you're directly employed, you're a contractual worker, of course you're a regular worker. Even, please note, if the statement comes that domestic workers can also be an aggrieved woman under the POSH Act, that statement is absolutely correct. That means a worker coming to a household, working for domestic chores in a domestic household, can also be an aggrieved woman if she is sexually harassed while at work. That can also be the case. So domestic workers are also, statement remember for prelims, domestic workers can also be an aggrieved woman under the POSH Act, can file a complaint under the POSH Act. How she will file a complaint, that is something that I will tell you in the coming slides, because a home or a household will not form an internal complaints committee. So what will be the measure is something that I will also tell you in the next slide. Now, what does sexual harassment mean? Please also understand, this also has been defined in a very wide manner. That means not only certain forms of physical touch, rather any sexually colored remarks or non-verbal conduct as well as verbal conduct can also be understood as sexual harassment. So that is something that you need to know. If they write a statement that only non-verbal conduct or physical touch or physical advancements can be considered as sexual harassment, that is incorrect. Even verbal statements or certain remarks can also be understood as sexual harassment. Any demand for sexual favors can also be understood, of course. And if you are also trying to exhibit pornography in front of a woman who's uncomfortable seeing that, can also be considered as sexual harassment. It applies to all workplaces, we've already done, whether government, whether private, whether NGOs, whether any public institutions, etc. And which all enterprises, now that was the statement 2, which all enterprises need to form an internal complaints committee. Please note, those enterprises with 10 or more employees, only they have to form an internal complaints committee. That is something that you need to remember. Other than that, you can also remember that wherever an internal complaints committee does not exist, for example, if there is a domestic worker, where does she go to complain if there is no internal complaints committee, obviously, in a household? In that case, she can file the complaint in a local committee that is constituted by the district officer in every district. So, those women who are aggrieved but they are not working in an enterprise where there are more than 10 members and therefore an internal complaints committee is lacking, they can file a complaint in the local committee at the district level, which is formed by a district officer. Is there a time limit in which a complaint should be filed? Yes. It is 3 months. In 3 months, the complaint should be filed, and an aggrieved woman can be doing that. She can file her complaint herself, or she can also authorize any other person to file the complaint on her behalf. So these are important factors that you need to know. When we talk about the composition of the committee, does the act mandate the presence of certain members? Yes. Majority or half of the people in the committee must be women, an important factor. And another mandatory provision is that at least one of the members on the ICC must be a person working in women's rights related organization, or a person representing an NGO working for the cause of women. The time frame for completion, is there a time frame in which the inquiry of the committee should be conducted? Yes. It should be conducted within 90 days of the receiving of the complaint, and in that duration, the information about the one who's complained as well as the accused, that should be confidential. The employer, after getting the recommendations of the committee, must take action based on the recommendations within 60 days. That means the employer cannot leave it lying. He has to, or she has to, work on the recommendations as well. And some form of monetary compensation is also possible under the POSH Act. So these are the important points that you need to know related to the Prevention of Sexual Harassment at Workplace Act. Now let's come to another question. Consider the following statement about POCSO, Prevention of Children Against Sexual Offences Act. This was in news also because a Supreme Court judgment clarified the interpretation of POCSO, which is why it becomes important for us to do. So under the Prevention of Children from Sexual Offences Act 2012, sexual assault is considered aggravated. That means a higher degree of sexual assault. Aggravated sexual assault if the abuse or the offence is committed by a public servant. Now, put some logical sense. This will absolutely be correct. When is a sexual offence or assault against a child considered aggravated? When it is performed by an individual which is in a position of trust by the child. That means a relative, a public servant, a person in uniform, for example, the armed forces, or the act is committed against a child who is unable to defend herself or himself, for example, someone who has some amount of mental disability or physical disability. So statement 1 is absolutely correct. The act basically provides for various degrees of sexual assaults, and the aggravated sexual assault is when it is committed by a person of trust, which includes a public servant. Second statement, the POCSO Act of 2012 makes it mandatory to report the cases. Failing to do so can lead to imprisonment. That means if you are an adult, it is not applicable to the child who has gone through a assault or an offense. But if you are aware that a child has been sexually abused, if you are cognizant of the fact that this has happened, it is mandatory for you to report. Later on, if it was found out that you knew of such an act that was performed and you did not report it to the authorities, you are also liable for punishment. So yes, it makes for mandatory reporting of cases under the POCSO Act. So second is also correct. Let's look at statement 3. Even mere viewing or possessing child pornographic content is an offence under the POCSO Act. Even mere viewing or possessing child pornographic content. This is what the Supreme Court had clarified. Earlier, it was understood that if you are caught in using child pornography, or if you're trying to circulate child pornography for commercial use, for commercial gain, only then you are committing the offense under the POCSO Act. But the Supreme Court made a clarification in 2024 in a case and said even viewing child pornographic content in India or having possession of child pornographic content, even without the intention of circulating it for commercial uses, even that will be considered an offense under the POCSO Act. This makes India one of the few jurisdictions in the world which has criminalized or which has made a penal provision against even viewing child pornographic content. So, statement 3 is absolutely correct in that regard as well. POCSO Act of 2012 mandates that the sexual offense or abuse must be reported in a time period of 1 year. This is incorrect. In fact, this is incorrect also on the logic that a lot of times children take a very long time to open up, to discuss something that has happened with them, and also to realize that something like this has happened to them. So that kind of late realization should not go away or should not be given due importance just because time has passed. So therefore statement 4 is not correct. There is no fixed time period. It is not mandatory that you have to report the offense within 1 year. So no limit in terms of reporting the offense or assault. That is something that you need to remember. Which of the given statements is or are incorrect, we are asking, and therefore only the fourth statement is incorrect and D is our answer. Let's look at the important provision of the POCSO Act quickly. The aim of the POCSO Act, of course, is to protect children against sexual harassment, against sexual assault, as well as preventing the use of child pornography. Now, children, what is considered a child under this act? Anyone below the age of 18 years of age, whether it is a boy or a girl. So a prelim statement says that the POCSO Act of 2012 is gender neutral. That statement is going to be correct. Yes, it is gender neutral. That means sexual offenses or assault even against a boy child will be prosecuted under the POCSO Act. There are various categories of offenses that have been recognized under the acts, and there are various degrees of punishments. For example, sexual assault or offense can be related to any kind of touch or touch of a sexual nature or any kind of an obscene act in front of a child. That can be sexual harassment or assault. A penetrative sexual assault will be in the form of a rape. But an aggravated sexual assault will be when conducted by a person in trust or someone that the child believes will not do any harm. And there are various punishment for these kind of categories, and of course the punishment will vary for every degree of offense. So higher the offense, that means aggravated sexual assault, higher the offense, higher will be the form of punishment that it entails. So that becomes important. Aggravated social assault will be when the assault is committed by either a public servant or a member of the armed forces, or there is a gang rape, or on a child with physical or mental disabilities. That means the child is unable to protect themselves nor come and complain about it, or by a relative or a person or position in position of trust. That is when it is considered as aggravated. Please also note, we also have done this. It is mandatory to report cases if you're cognizant and aware of the same. If not, you can attract some amount of imprisonment as well as fine. So it is mandatory to report. Another important fact that you need to know for prelims is that can you report offenses only after they have occurred? Absolutely not. So you can report offenses when it has occurred or when you believe it has a very high chance of occurring. It has a likelihood of occurring. So if the offense has occurred, of course you need to report. But if you also believe, if you're seen certain tendencies and you feel there is a high chance of an offense or sexual assault against a child that could occur, even then you can report the offense and you can report the issue. But mandatory reporting is very, very important. As we've already done, there is no time limit specified for reporting offences. It is not limited to 1 year. The trial of cases for POCSO cases is to be done in special courts. Those special courts should be child friendly. That means the statement of the child should be taken in a way that no more trauma is caused for the child. And all the proceedings are going to be in camera proceeding. In camera proceeding means those proceedings will not be open to the public. In the whole of this, the confidentiality of the child has to be maintained. That means the identity of the victim cannot be revealed. Again, when it comes to the current news aspect, Supreme Court had held in one of the cases that viewing, storing or possessing child pornographic content is punishable under the POCSO Act, and therefore India has come in one of the exclusive club of jurisdiction where explicitly criminalized. It is explicitly criminalized even watching child pornographic content. So this is also a offense now. It is not that you just have it or you possess it that you will not be charged of it. Even if you possess it without any commercial purposes, even then you will be charged for an offense under POCSO. The recording of the statement of the child is to be done by the magistrate or the police officer in a child-friendly manner, preferably in the presence of parents. Please understand, this is not mandatory. This is preferably the statement should be recorded in the presence of the parents or a person that the child is comfortable with. The statement should preferably be recorded by a woman police officer, not in uniform, so as to make it easy for the child to open up and therefore talk about the issues. Now let's come to another question. Consider the following statements. There is a high percentage of child wasting in India than child stunting. That means there is a higher child wasting in India is more than child stunting. That is the statement. This statement is incorrect. We will go into how there is a difference between the two indicators and what the National Family Health Survey, the 5th round, is basically telling us. So let's dive into this. Anemia among women in the age group of 15 to 49. Anemia is basically you are low in terms of your hemoglobin, you are anemic, has increased from National Family Health Survey 4 to National Family Health Survey 5. That means the percentage of women who are diagnosed with anemia, who are suffering from anemia, has increased from National Family Health Survey 4 to 5 in the last 5 years. This statement, unfortunately, is correct. Statement 3. The 6 into 6 into 6 strategy, 6 by 6 into 6 strategy, is India's comprehensive policy plan to eliminate tuberculosis. This is incorrect. It is India's strategy to eliminate anemia. That is why it is incorrect. Statement 4. An ASHA worker is an accredited social health activist working at the community level, must be a resident of the village, and must possess a nursing degree. Now, this is too much to ask because community healthcare workers are not to possess a very high nursing degree. Otherwise, they would have had to work in district hospitals, etc. They can have basic literacy, or they can be literate to the 8th grade or to the 10th grade, but a nursing degree is not required for a community healthcare worker. It can also be logically derived. Please understand, there has been a question in UPSC on Anemia Mukt Bharat. That means anemia is the focus, and therefore now the focus can be on the trends of anemia. How are we performing according to the 2 surveys that we have done? And also the role of the ASHA worker. What all roles the ASHA worker should perform or has the duty to perform has also been a prelims question. So that is why I've clubbed a lot of topics to give you a question. So one question Using this one question, we are going to be doing multiple other topics. Which of the given statements is or are correct? Or the statement is two only. I'm sorry, this is two only. So the statement is two only. That anemia among women in the age group of 15 to 49 has increased from National Family Health Survey 4 to the 5th round. So that becomes our answer D, that is 2 only. I'm sorry about the none. Now, because of these kind of malnutrition that we witness in the country in the form of wasting, in the form of stunting, we had launched what is called the National Nutrition Mission. That National Nutrition Mission was called the Poshan Abhiyan. The main agenda of the Poshan Abhiyan was to improve the nutritional status of children in the age group of 0 to 6 years, of pregnant and lactating women, as well as adolescent girls. So the idea was to improve the nutritional data in these specific age groups or these specific categories. Now we have also launched the Poshan 2.0 Abhiyan when the Poshan Abhiyan ended in 2001. Now we have launched the 2.0 Abhiyan as well, which is continuing. The idea is to ensure that the population becomes a human capital by providing sufficient amount of nutrition and countering malnutrition. It also includes what is called a Jan Andolan. Jan Andolan means to raise a lot of awareness about the nutrition related aspects. How we had a people's movement relating to Swachhata, relating to Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. Here we'll also have a people's movement. We'll include a lot of celebrities. We'll ensure a lot of awareness campaigns, use a lot of community health workers to ensure proper nutritional status is achieved for these vulnerable sections. So according to the Poshan Abhiyan, we had set certain targets that we had to achieve. We wanted to reduce stunting in India for children in the age group of 0 to 6 by 2% per annum. By 2% per annum. We wanted to reduce underweight prevalence, that is undernutrition, by 2% per annum. And we also wanted to reduce what is called as the low birth weight by 2% per annum. But when it comes to anemia is something that we had to or we wanted to reduce by 3% per annum, not 2% per annum. So these were the targets that were given under the Poshan Abhiyan. What all type of activities are taken under the Poshan Abhiyan? The first type of activities that are taken is proper antenatal checks that are done of pregnant and lactating women. Any kind of nutritional deficiencies and therefore they're treated by giving supplementary nutrition in the form of iron and folic acid tablets. Complementary food and feeding is also provided in the form of midday meals, etc. Optimum best breastfeeding practice, exclusive breastfeeding for a certain amount of months to a year is propagated, the awareness is increased. A lot of children die because of preventable diseases and therefore immunization against those preventable diseases is also provided where vaccines are given to children in that age group. The idea is to also use the Poshan tracker to monitor the growth rate. That means are children growing at the right pace? Are children growing with the right height? Are children growing with the right weight? That is also important. Anemia prevention is also taken up in that context, and it also includes the national deworming effort as well. That means to counter the soil transmitted helminths, which can also impact in the uptake of nutrition. This also ensures giving fortified foods in the form of rice, which is fortified in iron as well as folic acid, etc. It ensures diarrhea management because diarrhea is a huge cause of death for children in the age group of 0 to 1. It also ensures pre-primary education or early childhood care and education that is provided by multiple Anganwadi Kendras, which were earlier done by the ICDS services as well. And of course, it popularizes what is called as wash related activities. Water, adequate water, drinking water, hygiene, sanitation as well to be maintained. So these are the important aspects. under Poshan 2.0, there is a specified aspect to strengthen what are called Anganwadis. Anganwadis are community level centers which provide these kind of nutrition services as well as certain healthcare, food, nutrition and educational services to lactating and pregnant women as well as small children. So these Anganwadi sectors are to be upgraded under the Poshan 2.0. The take home rations in the form of midday meals, etc., they have to be quality checked. The idea is to use traditional food habits as well. That means anything that is growing locally can be also utilized in the same. So with this Poshan Abhiyan, it is also important to look at the different indicators. For instance, how a statement said that wasting in India is more than stunting. That statement was incorrect, because if you look at the indicators, children under 5 who are stunted, that is height for age. Stunting is basically you have a shorter height as compared to the height that you should have had at a particular age. This has reduced from 38% of children who were stunted to 35% of children who are stunted under the National Family Health Survey 5. So between the 4th survey and the 5th survey, there has been a reduction in the stunting levels under 5. That is something that we see. Wasting is that your weight is less as compared to your height. That means you are thinner. So that is wasting. Wasting is also reduced from 21 in National Family Health Survey 4 to 19% in the 5th round. So both stunting and wasting have reduced in the 5 years of the survey that has been conducted. But you need to know stunting, or the percentage of stunting in India, is more than the percentage of wasting in India. That is something I need you to know for prelims as well. The portion of children who are underweight, that means lesser weight for age, that has also reduced, and therefore all 3 parameters, these parameters are showing a positive improvement. But now when we look at the anemia related figures, you would see that in anemia related figures, the improvements are not visible. In fact, we have deteriorated in the same. Clear? So in children in the age group of 6 to 59 months who are anemic, the percentage of children that has increased from 58 to 67%. So please remember this increase. These trends can be asked. I'm not telling you to remember the percentage. I'm just asking you to remember the trends. That means, have we performed well in wasting, stunting and underweight? Yes, in these there have been improvement. But in anemia related figures, there has been a negative performance. Negative performance or downgrade. That means the percentage of children have increased who are suffering from the problem of anemia. Similarly, when it comes to the women in the age group of 15 to 49 who are anemic, that has also increased from 53 to 57. Just the trends that you need to know in order to solve the MCQ. So in 2018, we launched a dedicated program called Anemia Mukt Bharat, a strategy to reduce the prevalence of anemia in certain vulnerable sections. And in this, we basically launched what is called the 6x6 into 6 strategy. Please just remember the term exactly the way I had asked in the question. The 6 into 6 into 6 strategy. The objective is to identify 6 target groups or beneficiaries for which anemia reduction targets will be made, for which interventions will be made. 6 interventions, that means 6 ways through which we will counter the prevalence of anemia, and 6 institutional measures through which we will enforce this program. So 6 into 6 into 6 strategy is relating to anemia reduction, not tuberculosis, as the statement had mentioned. So the prevalence of anemia in the 6 groups, the six groups that have been identified are men in the age group of 15 to 49, women in the age group of 15 to 49, adolescent boys in the age group of 15 to 19, adolescent girls in the age group of 15 to 19, and children in the age group of 6 to 59 months. So that is the 6 beneficiaries that have been taken. Please note the trend in all of these. For all these 6 group, we see that the anemia presence or prevalence has increased. So I just need you to know that we have not performed well when it comes to anemia as a parameter from National Family Health Survey 4 to the 5th round. That is something, just the trend, not the figures. The figures are not important. Now, what are the interventions that we have taken under the Anemia Mukt Bharat program? First is, anemia is generally considered a result of iron as well as folic acid deficiency. That means iron deficiency. So certain tablets or supplements in the form of iron and folic acid supplements are given. This also ensures behavioral change. That means you're telling people to take up better forms of diet, iron-rich food, etc. It also ensures deworming. That means the soil-transmitted helminths in the intestines of children that blocks the uptake of minerals and nutrients, those are killed. Proper child feeding practices are also propagated. That means proper breastfeeding for some time. It also ensures delayed cord clamping after delivery. So the moment you cut the umbilical cord of a child just after delivery, it should be delayed by 3 minutes, because apparently in those initial moments, the child is deriving a lot of its nutrition as well as immunity. So delayed cord clamping after delivery is also a part of it. This will be a special focus on pregnant and lactating women. It will also address the non-nutritional cause of anemia. Is there a problem in terms of a blood-related disorder? Is there a problem related to a disease? So those non-nutritional causes will also be taken up. For example, those endemic pockets which have high prevalence of malaria or any other blood-related issue as well. The idea will be that even in those areas where there is a severe case of anemia, even blood transfusions or IV transfusions will also be an option. The auxiliary nurse midwives, those are again the community healthcare workers. They will be incentivized if they are bringing more and more people for better checkups and taking up these interventions. The frontline workers such as the ASHA workers, etc., will also be given training under this aspect, and they will also be instrumental in increasing awareness in the community. So these are going to be the intervention. The ministerial, what are the 6 institutional mechanism? Most ministries will coordinate with each other to bring about results. So there will be a convergence of ministries, strengthening the supply chains. That means the supply of supplements, etc. There will be dedicated centers of excellence that will be made, that will get into research about how to counter anemia better. There will be capacity building of healthcare providers and community sector workers, and there will be a proper dashboard in order to monitor any amount of success. So this was the question, a prelims PYQ. If I'm not wrong, this is in 2023. Question: consider the following statements in the context of interventions being undertaken under Anemia Mukt Bharat. First, it says, it provides prophylactic calcium supplement for preschool children, adolescent, and pregnant and lactating women. This is incorrect, because the idea is to provide iron supplements and folic acid supplements to counter anemia. It is not calcium supplements. So statement 1 will become incorrect. It runs a campaign for delayed cord clamping at the time of childbirth. We had understood this. It provides for periodic deworming. This is also something that we had done. So 3 is correct. It addresses non-nutritional causes of anemia in endemic regions as well. For example, the prevalence of malaria, etc. So this is also correct. So 3 out of 4 statements are correct. C becomes your answer. When we talk about the ASHA worker, an accredited social health activist, she must be, if you have to appoint a ASHA worker, she must be a resident of the village, very, very important, so as to have that connection as well as convincing powers for the members of that village. She should be in the age group of 25 to 45 years. As we had done in the question, she does not have to have a nursing degree. She can either be an 8th class pass, or she can, it's preferable if she has, those with 10th standard related qualification will be preferred more. But even if she has an 8th class formal education, that is also the case. So that is relating to ASHA workers. They are instrumental in creating community health awareness and also ensuring women are taking up antenatal checkups, children are coming for vaccination, and women are coming to proper healthcare establishment for institutional deliveries. So let's look at the role played by ASHA workers. This becomes a question. I'm sorry. This becomes a question as well. This was asked also earlier in prelims. The idea for them is to create awareness about nutrition, basic sanitation, hygiene, etc. They are also supposed to counsel women to ensure that they are prepared for birth, any deficiency that they can remove, to basically tell them about how vaccinations are important for children, to enhance child feeding practices, to encourage them for safe and institutionalized deliveries, to mobilize the community and facilitate the people to come for antenatal checkups and immunization. She also participates at the village level for the formation of village health plans. She's also supposed to accompany or escort women and children when they are coming to a primary health care center. She can also provide basic curative treatment for minor injuries or ailments because she has a safety aid kits. She's also supposed to take care of the DOTS program for tuberculosis control. She's a provider of the same. She's also provided training to also, in some regions, she can also be provided training to take care of palliative kind of care. Palliative care is basically care related to pain management. She also basically provides information about the birth of children as well as any kind of disease outbreak in the villages to the district authorities. So she's also in a way monitoring the health related aspects of the people in the village. So these are the roles of the ASHA workers. This was a question in prelims. With reference to National Rural Health Mission, which of the following are the jobs of the ASHA workers who are the trained community health workers? First, accompanying women to the health facility for antenatal care or checkup. Yes, absolutely. She's supposed to escort and accompany the women. Using urgency pregnancy test kits for early detection of pregnancy. Yes, she's supposed to basically help women with pregnancy related interventions. Providing information on nutrition and immunization, that means vaccination related programs. Yes, that is her job. Fourth, conducting the delivery of babies. No, they're supposed to escort women to a public healthcare center to basically do an institutional delivery. They themselves are not supposed to conduct the delivery. And that is why your answer becomes A, 1, 2, and 3 only. Simple. Let's come to another question now, and using this question, we'll introduce the topic. India is home to lakhs of persons with disabilities. There have been questions on disabilities, one in prelims 2011, as well as one in CDS exam, which was conducted in 2024, again repeated. So India is home to lakhs of persons with disabilities. What are the benefits available to them under the law, that is Persons with Disabilities Act or law? First things first, free schooling till the age group of 18 in government run schools. Are they provided? Are they allowed free schooling? Yes, this is a right that is enshrined under the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act. That means any child with disability should get free schooling. That means Right to Education provides free and compulsory schooling till the age of 14. But disabled children get free education from class 1st to class 12th. That means from 6 years till 18 years, they are allowed to get free education. So this is a part of it. Preferential allotment of land for setting up businesses. This is too much of a right given under law. This will almost become land reforms. So this is incorrect. There is no preferential allotment of land for setting up enterprises. Ramps in public buildings. Yes, this has to be provided. That means most of the public infrastructure has to be disabled friendly. It should be accessible to every individual who is suffering from any kind of disability. And therefore C becomes the answer. 1 and 3 only. Another question asked in 2024, we'll do this question and then I'll go to the explanation. Consider the following statements about the Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan. Please understand, Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan is just another term for the Accessible India campaign. Accessible India campaign specifically designed for ensuring accessibility to public built infrastructure, to transport infrastructure, as well as internet and communicable technology related infrastructure to every Divyangjan, that is persons with disability. The program is initiated by the Department of Empowerment and Persons with Disabilities under the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. That is absolutely correct. The department related to PWDs or Divyangjan is in the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. It aims to develop an inclusive society for persons with disability. Yes, inclusive by ensuring accessibility. So statement 2 also becomes correct. It has provisions of pensions for persons with disability. This is incorrect. There is no provision for pensions under the Sugamya Bharat or Accessible India campaign. The campaign is only focusing on ensuring every type of built infrastructure, transport means are provided for Divyangjan. It does not include a pension related clause. That is why the only correct statements are 1 and 2. B becomes your answer. So let's understand the Act, the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act of 2016 provides for multiple types of disabilities that are recognized under these Act. Almost 21 disabilities that have been recognized under this Act, from locomotive disabilities to blindness, hearing aid, etc. You can read this easily. I'm specifying on some. That means if a statement says blood disorders are included as disabilities under the Act, the answer is yes. So blood disorders are covered under the Act, yes. Are acid attack victims also covered under the Rights of Persons with Disability? The answer is yes. Do special learning disabilities such as dyslexia and dysgraphia, are these type of special learning disabilities covered? Yes, they are covered. So just remember the ones that you feel you're going to forget. The rest, I'm sure you will be able to identify and eliminate when there is a option. Now, what are the benefits provided under this Act? The first we have understood, every child, free education for children with benchmark disabilities. Benchmark disability simply means if a child has disability 40 or more than 40%. There is a certification that is done. There's a medical examination that is conducted. On that basis, a certificate of disability is provided. And benchmark disability is only considered when you are disabled for 40% or more. That means, according to the criteria, if you are disabled 40% or more, in that context, you will be given the certificate of benchmark disability. So there is free education for children with benchmark disability till 18 years of age. Till 18 years of age, that is till class 12th. Please remember that. There is a reservation and in the higher education institutes, that means in government colleges, etc. There is a reservation of 5% in government colleges for persons with disabilities. When you talk about government jobs, even in government jobs, there is a 4% reservation in government jobs for persons with benchmark disabilities. So these are the benefits that you need to remember. That can be an MCQ on the same. Is India a signatory to the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities? Absolutely yes. India has signed it as well as ratified the convention, and therefore you need to remember. Sugamya Bharat campaign, Accessible India campaign, is to ensure every public building, transport, as well as digital platforms such as websites, etc., are accessible to the persons with disabilities, so as to ensure that they have a barrier-free environment everywhere. These are the components of the Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan. It does not include a pension-related aspect. So built-up environment will ensure that all government buildings and public buildings have proper ramps, have proper disabled-friendly infrastructure. all government websites, etc., have also methods such as sign languages, documents, etc., are accessible through audios, sign languages, etc. A lot of transportation, that means most airports, railway stations, etc., are also made what is called as disabled friendly. So this is the aspect of the Sugamya Bharat campaign. Let's come to another and the last topic. Consider the following statements. It's important because there have been changes made recently related to this topic. Changes related to what is called the no detention policy. No detention policy has been scrapped recently. That means children can be detained in class 5th as well as class 8th. And the process of automatic passing or the promotion is not in sync now. So in that context, it's important to look at this. The Right to Education Act of 2002 was a legislation, that means a law, to give effect to a fundamental right, and that fundamental right is Article 21A, the fundamental right to free and compulsory education in the age group of 6 to 14. That means from class 1st to class 8th. That is absolutely correct, statement 1. Statement 2, the Right to Education Act of 2002 prohibits the deployment of teachers for election duty in order to ensure strict focus on teaching responsibility. Please understand, this is incorrect. Yes, the Right to Education Act prohibits the deployment of teachers for other duties other than teaching, except for a few exemptions, one of which is election duties for the state legislatures as well as for the parliament elections. These are the exceptions provided, as well as census is an exemption provided. So for these duties, the government teachers can be deployed, but otherwise they cannot be deployed other than those exceptions written in the act. So remember this as well. Statement 2 is incorrect. Statement 3, the Right to Education Act mandates private unaided school to reserve 25% of their seats at the entry level, that means in class 1st, for economically weaker sections. Yes, it makes it mandatory for private school to reserve 25% of their seats for economically weaker sections in class 1st, in the entry level. So this is also correct. Which of the given statements is or are correct? The answer is C, 1 and 3 only. So the Right to Education Act was introduced because we had to give effect to Article 21. Article 21 was introduced by the 86th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2002, which made it a fundamental right to provide free and compulsory education for children between 6 to 14 years. And therefore, this act provides for compulsory education. That means the government as well as the parents have to ensure that every child in this age group is attending school and the child is not liable to pay anything for the same. It makes it, there are provisions that any child who is not admitted should be admitted into an age appropriate class. There are proper standards and norms that have been given that this should be the teacher and pupil ratio. That means maybe there should be one teacher for 20 odd students in order to focus that a teacher, he or she, can make full focus on every individual. So there are standards and norms that have been specified. It prohibits the deployment of teachers for non-educational works other than the census, elections to local bodies, legislatures and parliament. So remember this. So in a general statement, yes, it prohibits, but there are certain exemptions also provided for this clause. It also makes it mandatory for the teachers that will be appointed at the elementary school level to have certain minimum basic qualifications and tests that they must pass in that regard. It prohibits any form of physical or capital punishment, and section 12 we've already discussed makes it mandatory for private school to have 25% of their seats reserved at the entry level for the economically weaker sections. with this, we've come to an end for today's session. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're taking back some important prelims information, which will be helpful for you to solve your MCQs. I will be uploading this PDF on the Telegram channel. The QR code I've given in the beginning of the video as well. Make sure that you like the video, comment down below, subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't yet. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again very soon. Take care. Bye bye.